Narito na ako, Noli Iyala, kilalanin ang mga nasa likod ng bawat laro. Sa buhay man o sa playing court, game na tayo! Power and Play sa Radyo 5, 92.3 News FM. Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
Sa kapwa ko Pilipino, ipagmalaki ang galing na meron tayo. Ilantad ang likas nating talento at magdala ng saya sa mundo. Sa harap ng pagsubok ay di susuko, para sa pangarap tayo'y porsigido. Magpakitang gilas na at huwag magpatalo, ipagdiwang natin ang Pilipino. Yan ang Pinoy. Mula noon at hanggang ngayon, talento natin ng bida. Mula sa simpleng bakuran hanggang entablado natin ipakita. May pagsubok man ng Pinoy, pinalalakas ng saya. San man tayo sa pulo, Syempre, Sibay, Lakay, Amiga. Sama-samang pakita ang galing natin katropa. Sa kapwa ko Pilipino,
Napanood nyo ba? Napanood nyo pa po yung pagkapanalo ng UP kontra Dallas kagabi. Sus Mariosep, a comeback victory para po kumpletuhin ang UAAP Finals. Talaga naman ang tamis ng pagkapanalo at ang pait ng pagkatalo sa pagdating sa palakasan. Pero dito po sa amin, happy-happy lang. Kaya bango na! Power and Play na! Power and Play with Noli Iyala. Magandang umaga, makasaysayang umaga, isa pong mapagpalayang umaga sa inyong lahat mga kapatid. Mula po sa TV5 Media Center, nagbabalik po ang inyong paboritong kasama tuwing Sabado ng umaga, lalong-lalo na sa almusal. Ito po ang Power and Play, hatid sa inyo ng Cherry Loom, ang yerong may aluminum, Cherry Tigo, it's fun to drive, at ng Chooks to Go, ang nag-iisang manok ng bayan powered by Smart. Magandang umaga po sa lahat ng ating mga nakikinig sa Radyo 5 92.3 News FM. Lahat po ng mga bumabiyahing pauwi dahil bukas na sa Lunes na po ay halalan, kaya yung mga pauwi na po, yung mga paluwas naman, and of course lahat po ng mga nais makilahok. Yan naman ang mahalaga para sa ating lahat, makilahok po tayo sa Lunes sa halalan bilang Pilipino. Magandang umaga din po, mayong buntag sa lahat po ng ating mga kaibigan sa Cebu, lalong-lalo na po sa Oslob, sa Oslob, Cebu. Ang ating po mga kaibigan dyan, si Malin, si Kuya Roy, at lahat po ng ating mga nakasama dyan, yung mga motorcycle riders at mga boatmen. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Kinakamusta rin natin of course lahat po na nanonood sa pamamagitan ng 1PH on Signal TV and of course on Facebook Live. Kaya na nabanggit po ngayong araw pong ito ay Sabado, huling araw ng pangangampanya. Kita nyo, 90 days po yan sa national elections. At 45 days siguro, pagod na yung ating mga kandidato. Ako naman po, sinasabi ko lang sa inyo, makilahok po tayo sa Lunes. Kung sino man po ang inyong kandidato, suportahan po natin. Pero pagkatapos po nito, tayo'y magkaisa-isa muli. At tayo po'y magsama-sama na para po naman ay mabuo muli ang ating bayan. Yung pong naging division, alitan, bangayan, itigil na natin yan. Simula po ng bukas, tapusin na po natin. Bumoto na lang tayo. At kung sinong manalo, ay ating pong suportahan. Siya nga pala, pinag-uusapan ng panalo, agagaya na nabanggit ko kagabi, nanalo po ang UP Fighting Maroons kontra Lasal. Pambihira, no? Alam niyo po, nanonood ako, biglang tumigil ako. Pagbalik ko, talo na. Natalo na. 14 yung lamang ng Lasal hindi ko maintindihan. Nung aking pong tinitingnan, wala na. Talo na ang Lasal. Ay, ang nangyari pala ay talagang grabe yung kanilang press at of course yung paglalaro ng isang batang-batang Carl Tamayo, King Fighting Maroon. Talaga namang pambihira. 12 of his 19 points in the fourth quarter. Yung go-ahead shot niya, end one, para bigyan ng tagumpay ang UP Fighting Maroon. So, kompleto na po ang finals at yan po ay pag-uusapan natin mamaya. Kontra, the defending 3-time champion looking for their fourpeat, ang Ateneo Blue Eagles. Bukas po yan, magsisimula ang finals ng UAAP. Ateneo kontra UP, their second time to meet in 3 years. And of course, naghahanap ang UP ng pagkakataong mabasag ang kanilang 36-year title drought ng Fighting Maroons. So magandang laban yan. Mamaya po makakausap natin mismo si Coach Tab Baldwin ng Ateneo live para pag-usapan ang UAAP Finals. Mamaya din po pag-uusapan naman natin Southeast Asian Games fencing, ang sport na ating itatampok sa In the Spotlight with our top fencer, Maxine Esteban. Isa po sa pinakamagaling na, ano ba yung fencing mandirigma, yung eskrima, di ba? Yung fencing po ay isang sport na spadahan. Okay? At si Maxine Esteban po, isang Filipino-Chinese na napakahusay. Ngayon nagtitrain sa Europe. Siya po ang ating makakapanayam mamaya. And finally, a scoop for power and play. Isa sa kaibigan po natin, naging PBA panelist, naging PBA coaching consultant noong dekada 90 at ngayon po ay siya ay ang isang international scout ng Dallas Mavericks. Totoo yan, Dallas Mavericks. Galing siya sa Toronto Raptors. Ngayon, Dallas Mavericks. Jim Kelly, pag-uusapan ng NBA draft kung saan ang ating kababayang si Kai Soto ay nag-apply at susubukang makapasok sa NBA. So mamaya po, Jim Kelly ang ating makakahuntahan sa Power and Play. So kompleto na, mga kapatid. Kapit lamang dahil napakaganda ng ating Sabado. Simulan na natin sa pamamagitan ng ating Sports Weekly Highlights. UAAP muna tayo. Battle of Katipunan muli. Ang finals, kagaya ng binabanggit ko kanina, ngayong taon matapos masurvive ng UP Fighting Maroons, ang Final Four natambakan ng 14 puntos bago mag-comeback ang Fighting Maroons para sa 78-74 comeback win kontra Dallas Green Archers. Makakatapat ng UP ang defending champions na Ateneo Blue Eagles na tinalo nila noong isang linggo. Matatanda ang binasag din ng UP ang 39-game winning streak ng Blue Eagles. Wow, ang gandang laban ito. Sa boxing naman, tinuluyan na ng World Boxing Organization na tanggalan ng belt si John Riel Casimiro, ang ating pong kababayan. Inalis ng WBO ang World Bantamweight belt sa controversial Pinoy boxer dahil 2 beses siyang nabigong lumaban para rito. Una dyan, ang napurnadang title defense niya kontra kay Paul Butler noong Syempre dahil sa gastritis. Nitong Abril, di na naman nakalaban si Casimiro kay Butler matapos ma-violate ang British Boxing Board rule sa paggamit ng SONA. Binigay kay Butler ang belt sa bantamweight division at ibinaba si Casimiro sa top contender status. Sa PBA naman, pinag-iisipan na raw ng Asia's oldest professional basketball league na mag-expand muli. Napag-usapan ng expansion sa ginanap na planning ng liga sa Boracay Island. 2 teams ang posibleng idagdag sa PBA. 2014 pa ang huling expansion ng liga kung saan pumasok sa PBA ang Kia at ang Blackwater franchise. Sa national team news naman, gold agad ang target ni Alex Ayala sa unang pagsabak niya sa Southeast Asian Games, dala ang Philippine flag. Higit 2 dekadang gold medal drought sa event ang susubuking sungkitin at basagin ng Pinoy Wonderkind. Kasalukuyang nagtitraining sa Manila Polo Club ang teenager tennis player bago ang simula ng tournament sa May 13. Speaking of Southeast Asian Games, inilabas na rin ang lineup ng Gilas Pilipinas para sa biennial meet. Kasama dyan sina June Mar Fajardo, Kiefer Ravena, Mo Tautua, Isaac Go, Troy Rosario, Matthew Wright, Roger Pogoy, Kib Montalvo, Kevin Alas, Lebron Lopez at Will Navarro. Target ng Pilipinas ang 14th straight gold medal sa event. 1989 pa huling natalo ang Pilipinas sa men's basketball event ng SEA Games. At yan po ang mga buod ng ating sports weekly highlights. Isa dyan sa mga pinag-usapan po natin, of course, yung plano ng PBA na magdagdag muli. Magdagdag uli, mga kaibigan, ng 2 pang koponan bilang expansion teams ng liga. At yan po ang ating pupulsuhan ngayong araw na ito. Sa ating Pulso ng Bayan, hatid sa inyo ng Chooks to Go, kung saan yung pong mga komentaryo nyo ay aming pipiliin, babasahin, at yung pong aming mapipili ay magkakaroon ng 2 gift certificates mula sa Chooks to Go, ang nag-iisang manok ng bayan. Ako, napakasarap ng bagong brand ng Chooks to Go. Natikman nyo na ba? Yung merong chicken flavorful sauce. Pambihira ang sarap, mga kapatid. Totoo po, subukan nyo po ang Chooks to Go. Napakasarap ng kanilang sauce. So, sila po ay ang ating magbibigay ng mga GC sa mga mananalo sa ating Pulso ng Bayan. At ito po ang ating pupulsuhan ngayong araw na ito. Tama ba na magdagdag ng expansion teams muli sa PBA sa panahon ngayon? Ulitin ko po yan. Tama ba na magdagdag ng expansion teams muli sa PBA ngayon? Kung gusto niyo pong makilahok, mag-text lamang sa aming hotline 0908-208-0629 o di kaya ay mag-comment sa aming Facebook page ng Power and Play. Pwede rin po sa 1PH at sa Radyo 5. Pero yung pong Power and Play ang inyong puntahan. And of course, sa aking pong Twitter account at Noli Iyala. Pipili po tayo ng 2 para sa 2 gift certificate each mula sa Chooks to Go. Ako po yung question na yan, mamaya pag-uusapan ko yan. Dahil ako meron din akong sariling pananaw tungkol dyan. Hindi po masama yan, lalo-lalo na sa mga player. Pero meron pong dapat ikonsidera ang PBA bago po sila ay mag-isip, magpasok muli ng bagong koponan. Alright, mga kaibigan, doon po sa mga nag-aabang ng NBA, lumalamang ang Philadelphia sa kasalukuyan in Game 3 kontra Miami Heat, 37-31. At naglalaro na po muli si Joel Embiid, bagamat basag ang kanyang forehead at nanggaling sa mild concussion, naka-face mask si Joel Embiid at siya po ay naglalaro para sa Sixers. Alright, tuloy-tuloy po tayo. And syempre, hindi naman pwedeng mawala ang ating paboritong Fast Take.
Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
Ang Fast Take ay hatid sa inyo ng Cherry Tigo. It's fun to drive. At ngayong araw pong ito, ang ating makakasama sa Fast Take, mga balik Fast Takers. Although matagal-tagal na rin na hindi natin nakakasama itong mga to. Walang iba kundi si Justin Bacnis ng Tiebreaker Times at si Ivan Suing ng Daily Tribune. Justin, Ivan, thank you for joining us ngayong umaga. Kumusta kayo?
Ay, gandang umaga, Kom. Doing well, Kom. Hopefully doing well too.
Magandang umaga rin po, Kom. Thank you ulit po dito. And I'm okay naman po.
Maraming salamat sa pagsama sa amin. Bago tayo magtuloy-tuloy sa ating Fast Take issues, tanungin ko lang ikaw muna, Justin, tungkol sa itong pagkapanalo ng UP kontra Lasal. Pambihira. Ako talagang naidlip lang. Yung kumbaga nawala lang ako sandali. Nawala na yung 14 puntos na kalamangan. Ano sa tingin mo ang magandang adjustment na ginawa ni Coach Goldwin doon sa pagkapanalo ng UP kahapon?
I think, it's not really about the X and O's anymore na. I think it was just pure grit. Especially with Carl Tamayo leading the way. 14 down, they could have easily folded. But season on the line, lumaban yung mga bata pa rin. And I think Carl Tamayo said it best. Tagal na nilang kasama si Coach Goldwin and tinuruan sila to never give up, and that's exactly what they showed. So, yeah.
Well, talagang maganda, napakaganda na pinakita ni Carl Tamayo. Although nung first half medyo struggling siya, talagang bumawi siya noong last quarter ng laban na yan. Ivan, let me ask you about this Pulso ng Bayan question namin, ginagawa namin tungkol sa expansion ng plans ng PBA. Sa tingin mo ba, ito ay napapanahon na para sa PBA?
I think yes rin ho. Kasi there are a lot of talents in the collegiate scene and in the amateur scene in general that gusto rin magpakitang gilas na rin in the professional ranks. So, if there are expansion teams that are willing to invest in the PBA for a long-term project, I think it will be better for the league in the long run.
Alright. Well, I agree with you. I think maganda ang expansion. I've always espoused that, lalong-lalo na kung gusto nyo pong hindi masyadong makontrol ng mga conglomerates ang liga. Yun ang tinatawag sa corporate law na ika nga dilution, no? Nadidilute yung dami ng boto mula sa halimbawa 3 out of 12 ay ngayon ay magiging 3 out of 14 na. So pababa ng pababa yung percentage ng control ng mga conglomerates. No? So again, maganda yan pero mahalaga muna syempre yung ayusin nila yung salary cap. And I think itong expansion na to ay dapat din magkaroon ng dispersal draft. Alright, let's go to our fast take issue of the morning. Ang una, alam naman ninyo ang drill dito, walang mali, walang tama, bato-bato sa langit, tamaan, wag magagalit, and of course, ang inyong opinion ang mahalaga. Ready na kayo? Justin at Ivan, sa ating unang issue, ito'y tungkol sa UAAP. Alam natin, ang maglalaban bukas, Game 1 ng UAAP Finals ng Season 84 ay ang Ateneo kontra UP. Ito ang tanong, ano ang prediction nyo sa UAAP Men's Basketball Finals ngayong taon na ito, ngayong season na ito? I'll begin with you, Justin. 1 minute, go!
Fearless forecast na siguro kung may tuturing, but I see an Ateneo sweep. Pero close games, panigurado lalo sa second game. But just to be clear, this doesn't mean naman that we're not giving UP a chance. We always root for the underdogs, definitely. And they're out there to prove that their win over Ateneo last Sunday was no fluke. But knowing Coach Tab and Ateneo, for sure gigil din yan to get back at UP dahil, again, 39-game winning streak lang naman yung nadali nila last Sunday. Coach Tab said na he made tactical mistakes that game, so I'm curious kung paano niya i-address yun against UP. UP naman, sige, pagod, pero sa nilaro nila last night where they came back nga from 14 down to beat Lasal, that should also be a point of concern for Ateneo dahil they've proven na they can close out games. And that's precisely what they did last Sunday. And I'm actually giving the psychological edge to UP. Ateneo, sige, pero yung psychological edge right now is definitely on UP.
Alright. Well, mamaya makakausap natin si Coach Tab Baldwin ng Ateneo at yung mga katanungan mo yan ay maaaring masagot ni Coach Tab entering game number 1. Same issue, Ivan, para sa'yo. Ano ang prediction sa UAAP Men's Basketball sa pagitan ng Ateneo at UP? 1 minute, Ivan. Go!
I don't have to be the same with Kuya Justin. I see an Ateneo win, but I want this to be a 3 games lahat na laro. I think Coach Goldwyn has a chance to force a game 3 against Ateneo. But knowing Coach Tab, he's a master of adjustments. He knows how to tweak agad. And based na rin sa naging games nila sa UAAP and his stint with Gilas, he knows how to make tactical adjustments. Yes, he made mistakes against UP in the last elimination round game. But knowing him, he knows how to prep up his boys, knows how to tweaks his tactics, and alam naman natin kung paano siya mag-motivate sa mga bata. And knowing na mahabang kanilang pahinga because of their nakapagpahinga sila ng mas maaga because they made quick work of FEU. Ateneo has a physical advantage because they're more refreshed, more energized, that they'll be going into the first game of the finals already.
Magandang punto yan, Ivan, yung pagpapahinga. Of course, dahil dumaan ang UP sa 2 pang laro bago makatapat ang Ateneo. Samantalang Ateneo ay winasiwas ang FEU and nakapagpahinga. May advantage. Pero syempre, ang Ateneo din, nag-aantay kung sino makakalaban. So, ang preparation nila, halos pareho lang. Ngayon lang maghahanda ang Ateneo para sa UP dahil hindi nila alam kung Lasal ang makakalaban o UP. No? At the same time, ang UP naman, alam nila kung mananalo sila, Ateneo na kanilang makakalaban. So, there may be plus and minuses there, but I agree with the two of you. Hindi dahil ako galing po sa Ateneo, pero I think Ateneo will win this one. Hindi ko pa nakikita yung karanasan ng UP na maaaring maipush sila to the top. But I think it will be very close at kung magkakamali ang Ateneo, magiging complacent, meron tulog. Just kung talagang ang UP ay pupukpok ng husto. Alright, let's go to our second fast take issue of the morning. Ito naman ay tungkol sa Gilas Pilipinas na lalaban sa Southeast Asian Games. Another solid lineup, PBA-dominated lineup ni Coach Chot Reyes. Pero ang sinasabi nila, yung iba sinasabi, overkill daw. Ako, I believe, kailangan lang manalo tayo. Manalo. Wala namang overkill pagdating sa sports, no? So, ang tanong, sure gold na daw ang Gilas Pilipinas sa SEA Games Basketball. Pero, meron ba kayong gusto pang makita sana sa ating national team? Ikaw muna, Ivan. 1 minute. Go!
I know PBA-centric team would be great for the Philippines in the upcoming SEA Games. Pero if it weren't for the COVID protocols ng mga collegiate teams, I really wanted to see some collegiate faces sa roster na yun. Not only because gusto, yung sabi nyo ako na sure gold na raw po tayo sa SEA Games basketball, but I want to see the development there. I want to see some pieces. I wanted to see some key players, like for example, mga like RJ Abarrientos or Justin Arana joining the Philippine squad in Vietnam, since natapos na rin naman yung respective campaigns nila sa UAAP and NCAA respectively, just so we can have that continuity, kumbaga, para hindi sila nagsasagnate, hindi lang tayo basta nga aasa lang sa PBA players, so that we can we can get ourselves ready for the long term, especially with the FIBA World Cup just around the corner.
Alright. Well, alam naman natin medyo aberration itong taon na to dahil sa pandemya at dahil dun sa naging delay sa schedule. Naglaro UAAP kahit na summer na hindi naman nila ginagawa. But hopefully tama ka, Ivan, sa mga kagustuhan mo. Same issue para sa iyo, Justin. Sure gold na daw ang Gilas Pilipinas. Pero may gusto ka ba bang makita mula sa ating national team? 1 minute, Justin. Go!
I know we should all be objective as journalists and we shouldn't cry over spilled milk, so to speak. But I just can't help but wonder lang talaga what if, the Gilas program did not hit the reset button last January. Imagine SEA Games ngayon, another opportunity for those young guys sana to mature leading into the World Cup. When I say young guys, say frankly, yung mga bata ni Coach Tab. Last year, diba? But here we are now, and composition-wise, I know may mga hindi nakasama either because of injuries or commitment sa other teams abroad. But I personally like the mix. Kumbaga kompleto sa Ricardos na rin to eh. From PBA guys, na veteran internationalists at the same time, to young amateurs, diba? This is practically the core of the 2019 World Cup team eh, kung titignan natin. Na dinagdagan mo ng pyesa mula doon sa sumunod na programa. So now it's just a matter of gelling them together in time for the games. I think May 16 to 22 ata ang basketball. So,
oo. Well, maganda yung sinabi mo na ito ay core. Maybe merong plano si Coach Shot really to develop it and continue the program. Of course, alam natin na may mga players pa sanang dapat naglaro dyan. Dwight Ramos could not make it dahil sa kanyang commitment. Pero alam mo, yan ang isang bagay na gusto ko sanang i-emphasize. No? Alam mo, nakausap ko si Jim Kelly, and again, we will show it later. Sabi ni Jim Kelly, an international scout, and siyang kasama niya si Luka Doncic. He scouted Luka Doncic. Ang sabi niya, si Luka daw hindi nagpapahinga. Hindi humihindi. Pagkatapos ng NBA season, tuloy siya sa Slovenia to play for their national team, and he plays 11 months in the year. Kaya daw talagang wala sa kondisyon pagdating sa NBA. Yung bang yung pagod, hindi nakakapagpahinga. Hindi maganda, pero pag tiningnan mo yung attitude, sana ganun lahat ng player. Na talagang wala kang tigil. Talagang para sa national team, hindi ka tatanggi. At sana lahat ng kontrata nila, kahit saan man sa mundo, merong ganung klaseng clause. Alright, last issue of the morning. Ito ay tungkol sa NBA. Dahil nga, sabi natin, kausap natin si Jim Kelly, NBA draft, mamaya pag-uusapan natin. At sinong nandun? Kai Sotto sa ang ating pag-asang makapasok sa NBA. So ang tanong, i-assume natin napapasok si Kai Sotto sa NBA draft. Anong team ang pwedeng mag-draft kay Kai Sotto sa NBA? Aling team kaya siya bagay? I'll begin with you, Justin. 1 minute, go!
Last night, I was having this conversation with a colleague of ours, Eros Villanueva, na nagiging guest din po natin dito sa
Tama, oo.
About Kai. And I have to agree with this take, no? Kung may kukuha man kay Kai, pwedeng Golden State or Brooklyn late in the second round. Lalo na if those teams are looking for size. And knowing the Warriors, if ever man po, they have kasi this knack of developing young talents eh. Pero to be honest with you, itong tanong na to is too difficult to answer at this point. Opo, Mayo na ngayon and the draft is in June. Pero wala po talaga tayo kasing malinaw pa na nakikita una sa lahat as to where Kai is in this deep sea of talent eh. Alam naman natin na wala pa siya sa rankings ng top prospects of major US sports outlets for now, including ESPN. But ang kainaman naman, he has the chance to, raise his stock through private workouts with teams kung maimbitahan. And syempre po, in the draft combine, that's happening about 2 weeks from now.
Alright, well, Golden State, Brooklyn are excellent names. Tama yan, nangangailangan sila. In fact, ang Golden State, hinahanap na nga si Rudy Gobert, no? Pero, you're looking at a developmental player. Kai Soto is probably a good name out there. But tama ka rin, hindi pa natin alam kung ano mangyayari kay Kai. But assuming, Ivan, napapasok si Kai, ang tanong, saan ba pwedeng mapuntang team si Kai Soto? Saan kaya siya bagay? 1 minute, Ivan, go!
For me po, it either be Charlotte or Houston. Charlotte because from what I've read na rin ho, si Mason Plumlee pa lang po yung center nila doon, and Harrell po would be a free agent in the next season. So that will be a lot of minutes for Kai, and especially imagine those alley-oops with the LaMelo Ball. And as for my decision din with Houston, I want to see him team up with Jalen Green, and it's about time na rin for Houston to have another Asian center in the roster. Again, this is only my opinion lang rin po, and we don't know how much or how far Kai will go in, how deep Kai will go into the NBA, because ayun nga po, medyo it's nakaisang season pa lang po siya sa NBL, but again, like Kuya Justin said, meron pa po yung draft combine, so he still has a chance to raise his stock and prove to scouts that he's a worthy talent to pick up for.
Alright, well, those are surprising names, although ang Houston, nandiyan si Jalen Green, may at least may familiar face, and I think that's a perfect setting for him. Ang dami rin mga Pilipino, of course, sa Texas. But ako, personally, I'd like to see him in Miami. I think that under Eric Spoelstra, maalagaan siya mabuti. I'd also like to see him, of course, sa Golden State because ang dami-daming Pilipino, of course, sa California. But again, let's just pray na si Kai Soto ay makarating sa NBA kung anumang team yan para tayo ay muling mabigyan ng karangalan bilang isang bansa. Justin, Ivan, again, as always, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having the two of you on the show. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat din po, Com.
Mga kaibigan ng ating mga kapatid sa hanap buhay, Justin Baknis ng Tiebreaker Times at si Ivan Suing ng Daily Tribune. Of course, as always, ito po ang Fast Take kung saan ang opinion ng ating mga kaibigan ang mahalaga. Alright, mga kaibigan, tuloy-tuloy po tayo. Ngayon po sa panahon na to, mga kaibigan, sa oras na to, medyo kakambyo tayo ng konti as we wait for our next interview kung saan ating po makakausap si Coach Tab Baldwin. Pero isa munang paalala mula sa ating mga kaibigan from Smart. Puso Pilipinas is a movement to celebrate the Filipino athlete powered by Smart. Follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Get a chance to win exclusive Puso Pilipinas merch by sharing their Facebook page in your social media accounts with hashtag Puso Pilipinas. The Giga Life app is the latest mobile app from Smart that lets you discover and enjoy your passions with the different Giga promos. It can be downloaded and used by Smart Postpaid, Smart Prepaid, Bro Prepaid, and TNT subscribers via the Apple or Google Play Store. What can the Giga Life app do for me? Check your balance, monitor your current subscription, top up using debit credit card, subscribe to the latest Giga promos, monitor your data consumption. Auto-detect your mobile number when you are connected to Smart Network One Tap subscription to the most popular offer, Giga Video 99. And of course, Power and Play is powered by Smart. When we return, dito po sa Power and Play, makakasama na natin ang head coach ng Ateneo Blue Eagles in their return to the UAAP Finals. Coach Tab Baldwin sa Power and Play. Hatid sa inyo ng Cherry Loom, Cherry Tigo, at ng Chooks to Go. Ang oras po natin, 8:29 ng umaga. This time check is brought to you by Birmingham Subdivisions. Come home to Birmingham.
Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
I dare to dream big. To be a voice of my generation. To inspire resilience in the face of roadblocks. And in sharing my stories, I let others share in my passion.
Follow Kai's stories on Twitter and share yours. With Smart Double Giga Stories. Share 2 times the passion with 2 gigabytes for Twitter and more. Guaranteed every day, plus data for all sites.
Simple, smart ako.
Alex, are you ready to have some fun on your first driving lesson?
Nag-uumapaw sa real chicken juice na swak sa panlasa ng buong pamilya. Available in sweet roast, pepper roast, at harissa roast variants. Chooks to go. Masarap kahit walang sauce. Tawag na sa Chooks to Go Delivery Hotline 8687-1010 o online sa chookstogodelivery.com or via GrabFood at Foodpanda.
Sa Radyo 5 92.3 News FM. Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
And welcome back to Power and Play. By the way, nagsimula na po ang Southeast Asian Games sa Vietnam, and congratulations right away to Team Philippines as we open up with victories in football and handball. Kahapon po tinalo ng Team Philippines yung U23 team natin sa football, ang Timor-Leste. Samantalang ang ating kupunan po ay nanalo sa Thailand sa handball 18-16, 18-16. Malaking bagay yan, ha? And hopefully patuloy ang tagumpay ng Team Philippines sa Southeast Asian Games. Alright, at this point, wag na tayo magpatumpik-tumpik pa. Let's bring in our special guest for this morning in our first hour of Power and Play. No other than the head coach of the returning UAAP finalists, the Ateneo Blue Eagles, Coach Tab Baldwin. Good morning, Coach.
How are you this morning?
Good to see you again, and congratulations on your 5th straight finals in the UAP. Does this feeling get old? Before we get to some questions here, Tab, does this feeling get old, Tab, for you?
No, it doesn't. You know, and especially because of the break from the pandemic. You know, I mean, I think everybody was so excited to get back to basketball, as we covered a couple of months ago.
Yeah, that's right.
To be back in the finals is very rewarding for all of us, and very exciting.
All right. Well, you know, you finally have an opponent after that big win by UP and, you know, over LaSalle yesterday, a comeback win. Coach Tab, what was the most impressive part of that win by UP over LaSalle last night?
Well, certainly the comeback. You know, the fact that, and not just game 2. You know, game 1 they did the same thing and fell just short. So you kind of had a feeling in that fourth quarter that LaSalle didn't really have control of the game. And I thought the most telling thing about the whole comeback was the lineup that Coach Baldwin used. You know, he really went back to his high school championship players.
That's right.
And Carl Tamayo and Alarcon in there with Diouf. And those 5 guys are the ones in the last 4 minutes that pulled back that 14-point lead and really won the game.
Yeah.
And that is a gigantic message, certainly to us. And we took note of that.
Well, you had a message was sent to you when you last met them, of course, in the at the end of the elimination round after that streak of yours was finally ended by UP. And, you know, again, many people talk about that. Do you think that was a blessing in disguise for you? Was there too much pressure being placed by that win streak for the boys to keep going into the Final Four?
Look, I didn't feel it. I mean, I don't think players felt it. We played a bad game, and UP played a very good game. UP played a very smart game as well. And we were not on our game psychologically, mentally. Maybe that is because of the pressure. You know, you can make all the guessing games in the world, but until you bring the psychiatrist in and analyze everybody, you probably don't really know.
Yeah.
But, you know, we always de-emphasize the streak, and, you know, now it's gone, so it's really nothing to talk about anymore.
Right. And of course, the victory over FEU obviously was a statement game as well for the boys as they bounced back from that. How important, or what kind of, I know the victory was important, but what element of that game did you think showed you signs that they're ready?
They were hungry, very hungry in that game, and I've seen that even in practices. And it's a great quality to see in your team. And maybe the fact that I highlight that says something that prior to that, maybe we had lost some of that hunger. Again, tough to say, but certainly it was there in the FEU game, and it was a complete performance. We played well at both ends of the floor against a very, very tough, spoiling type opponent, because Olsen, when he coaches, he does things to take away your system, take away your comfort zone, and he does that so well. And I think we battled through that. We looked pretty good most of that game, and we got good performances from our bench. And this is really, I think, what we need to challenge for this championship.
Well, the last time we talked, I talked to you, Coach Tab. We were about to begin the season 84, and you told me that one of your concerns is how the boys would respond to the season. Not having played too many games before that, and of course the conditioning. Now that you are back in the finals, are there any big revelations to you, and what gives you satisfaction that those questions have been answered for you?
Well, they haven't. I mean, they haven't at all. I think that like other teams, if you just look right now at UP, you see CJ Cancino and Forteo on the sidelines with injuries. We just went through a patch where we had Gio Chu and Mamu on the sideline with injuries. Calendar or the very compressed schedule that we've gone through. I'm tired. It's really tough. Fortunately, we have depth on our roster. We have depth on our coaching staff, and a lot of people stepping up and doing their jobs. But it's been brutal. No other way to put it. And I think everybody is looking forward to playing this final, but everybody's looking forward to getting out of the bubble and trying to get back to real life.
Right. Well, it can be very, very mentally exhausting, especially for all of you to be remaining in a very guarded environment. And obviously that is really taking a toll on everyone in the league. You lost the game against UP, as I mentioned a while ago. That's 39 wins over 40. Anytime I have that score in my test, I would take it, Tab. But, people continue to harp on that one particular loss. And you yourself took the blame for this. Where was the mistake, Tab, as far as you're concerned? I don't want you to expose any of your tactics, but where do you think was that particular mistake that you were mentioning?
No, it was very clear. It was very clear in my head when it happened. We decided to start the game in a zone because we wanted to try and get Goldwyn to make adjustments to us. And to his credit, he stuck to that lineup. That lineup performed well. And there was one particular possession when we were in the zone that I saw very clearly that they had figured something out tactically. I don't know whether that came, from the players, from the coaches, but it was a clear indication to me that it was time to get out of the zone, and I didn't. I was a little bit stubborn. I can say it was a clear indication. I guess in hindsight, it was a clear indication, but I knew at that moment that I should adjust, and I didn't. Stubbornness, we can call it whatever you want, but we continued for probably 3 or 4 more defensive possessions in the zone. And we saw a lead that was about 6 to 8 points, which is very manageable, balloon up to 12, I think maybe even 14 points. Right. And, we just dug a hole that we did dig out of it, but it requires so much effort and energy to do that, and UP responded very well when we did dig out of the hole, and they were just tougher down the stretch. And that that didn't cost us the game, but it certainly contributed to a bad performance.
Well, one of the I guess the critics would have said that one of the things that maybe teams can take advantage of against Ateneo, the very few things that they can take advantage of against the Blue Eagles, are your slow starts. We've seen that in some games. We've seen that even against teams that are not in the Final Four. Are you concerned about that?
Not at all. Not at all. If you watch, if you're a fan of boxing, and I know that you are, you see so many matches where the first 2-3 rounds are a feeling out process and really sort of an analysis process by the boxers and their trainers. What's the game plan from the other team? And I've never been a believer in big leads early. Don't like them. You always seem to lose them. And there's some psychological disadvantage that goes to a team that gets down early and then fights back and works their way into the game. Obviously, you don't want the hole to be too big, but slow starts are not something that concerns me at all.
All right.
I do like a good start, but I also know that presents challenges to your team in terms of relaxing and getting complacent and settling down too early.
Well, yeah.
I enough basketball to know that quick starts are not really the key to success, and we don't really worry too much about it.
Well, in anything in life, it's never really the start, but how you finish the game.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that includes sports and even elections. Tab, let me go to the finals now. You're meeting UP a second time around in 3 years, and this is just another magical matchup because it's between 1 and 2, Battle of Katipunan. A lot of the narratives, you've got players there that you coached, including their star player, Carl Tamayo. What makes this finals different from the last time you met them? Outside of the fact that, of course, there are new faces there, but what makes it different for you?
Different coach, different roster, but not a lot really. This is another final, and it's another Battle of Katipunan, and that has a meaning all to its own. Coming off of a big historic win against us that they had, they will have momentum from that. They will have belief from that. That was the thing that I told my team. That was the biggest concern of mine, was to give a worthy opponent belief. If you can take that away from them, it's so much better. But I think the biggest difference is just, Goldwyn, and the fact that he has this roster that is littered with players that he coached in high school that were championship players. Mm-hmm. And that flavor runs throughout their team. Mm-hmm. That toughness, that defensive mindset that he always has, and that championship pedigree that these players bring. And again, I go back to the semifinal or to the game 2 and say, that's a huge story when you see a coach go with a bunch of young kids, put veteran players on the bench, and recover from a 14-point lead with a bunch of first-year players, mm-hmm. which is exactly what he did. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the way that those players played, they played for their coach. And there was a real chemistry there at work in those last 4 minutes that is undeniable. And right. If we don't take note of that, and we don't prepare for that, we could suffer the same outcome that LaSalle that LaSalle did. UP, as you said, is different. They have a new coach. There's no more Bright Akweti. There's now Malik Diouf. You've got a young star in Carl Tamayo. You've got a lot of new players there, but Ateneo is the same thing. Ateneo has come is parading new players, new faces here. Is Ateneo, and I want to ask you because I'm sure the other team can take care of itself, but is Ateneo a better team than the last team that met UP in the finals? No, we're not. We're a pretty good team, but we're not at that caliber for one simple reason. We haven't had enough time to prepare to be at that level. And, you're going to hear me beat that drum forever. The preparation determines almost everything in sports. And we just simply didn't get the time with our new players. We didn't get the time for our veteran players to recover from the pandemic. But that's no different than any other team. So, you just have two teams now that are going to play with a lot of heart. You look at LaSalle, they gave everything they had in those 2 games. And I think that is the bigger story at this point in the season than, how well the teams are going to play. Mm-hmm. I think it's just going to be a battle of wills, and you're going to see 2 great crowds up in the stands. It's going to be exciting. But as I've said all along for this season, I think that the caliber of basketball suffers, just because of the particular scenario that we're all living and working through. You look at that LaSalle UP game, there's 37 turnovers in that game.
Right. Yeah.
Extraordinary number of turnovers for such an important game.
Yeah.
And
Well,
again, I just think that's more evidence.
and fatigue is certainly setting in with all the players. Let's go to the X's and O's just very quickly, Tab. If you talk about that, what are the keys for you to be successful against UP? And what are your biggest concerns as well when the boys start playing?
I think we have to defend, of course, and we have to rebound with their big front line of Diouf and Lucero and Tamayo. That's a danger. That front line has the ability to really take over a game, and if they are allowed to score the way they were in the fourth quarter, you saw UP had some difficulty scoring in the first three quarters, but those three guys got going. Well, two of them did anyway in the fourth quarter, and they're all capable. So Zave can have a big game on any day as well. That's a concern, and then UP's pressure. It was a very telling factor in the fourth quarter of the game. They did such a tremendous job putting LaSalle's guards under pressure that, they really turned the game around. And, you have to credit Abajano, who, has been in and out all year long. He came in and played a huge role with Fortea out injured and CJ Cancino out injured. He got a massive performance from Abajano. And so that's just going to give them confidence. We may see CJ back in the finals. He may be recovered. So, there are a lot of these factors, but I think a lot of the game is going to boil down to the same thing that it always does in championships, and that's defense and rebounding. And, UP did a great job against the tremendous LaSalle defensive and rebounding team. Right. And we have to rise to that standard as well if we expect to be successful.
Well, this is going to be interesting with all the matchups coming up, from the import, from your foreign player, all the way to your rookies. It's going to be a terrific match. Any concerns about officiating? I know you've talked about that at some other time during the FEU game. You've mentioned that. Even Coach Olsen said something about officiating. Is there any particular area that you want to address in terms of officiating here?
Look, I've never entered a game of basketball that I wasn't concerned about officiating. I mean, officiated practice, it's a problem. Just a very difficult job. And the one thing that I think all coaches want is they want to know what's the methodology of the referees before the game. Is it going to be physical? Are they going to call touch fouls? And then you hope it's consistent. And, that level of concern exists all the time. And sometimes as a coach, you hope that you always get that. Sometimes you don't. And, it leaves you scratching your head. But, as Commissioner Tanichi said to me, he said, referees have good days and they have bad days, just like players and coaches. And that's very true. And, I believe referees have to be able to take criticism. And, I think that they've done a pretty good job this year. And, just hope that they have a good game. And I hope that they have a good day. I hope I do. I hope Goldwyn has a lousy day. And but that's just being honest.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I suffer from being too honest, I guess.
Well, I know that. We both know that, Tab. But it's going to be a fun day tomorrow. Everyone will be out. Campaign's over. It's now time to focus on the real war, which is in basketball, the battle of Katipunan. Before I let you go, Tab, I have to ask you this. The public release is that you quit Gilas because you wanted to concentrate on Ateneo. And now you are back in the UAAP finals for a fifth straight time. Does this, or will a victory vindicate that decision of yours of leaving Gilas?
There's a lot more to that story than has been told, and I'm not seeking vindication at all. I'm just trying to coach my basketball team the best way that I can and give them every opportunity to be successful and to realize what they dream about, and that's what our program does. And that's what I'm busy trying to do. And, Gilas is in the rearview mirror now, and I'm very focused on my Ateneo basketball team. I'm very happy coaching them. And, that's just where we're at.
All right. Well, we wish you all the best, Tab, in Game 1 and in the entire finals. I know it's going to be a beautiful series, and it's really going to be a series that'll be for the ages. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you in the game.
Thanks, Noli. I'll be looking forward to seeing you too, mate. You take care and God bless.
Mga kaibigan, ang head coach ng Ateneo Blue Eagles gunning for their fourth straight championship in 5 years. Coach Tab Baldwin on the eve of game number 1 ng UAAP Finals kalaban ang UP Fighting Maroons. Naku, ang gandang laban yan po. Mapapanood din niyo po yan sa One Sports sa UAAP channel dito po sa Signal TV. Kaya abangan niyo po bukas yan dito po game 1 ng UAAP. Alright, before we take a break, puntahan muna natin. Medyo cambio tayo ng konti. Puntahan muna natin ang mga viral videos at pop culture sa online dito po sa ating Stop and Pop.
Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
Ang video pong ito ay pinamagatan ng ating mga staff na kanta ni Sarah G. Kasi meron ng kanta si Sarah G, yung ikot-ikot ba yun, Santi? Ikot-ikot. Panoorin po natin itong galaw na ito ng isang basketball player dito po sa videong ito. Sa basketball kasi, minsan ikot-ikot lang hanggang makarating sa hoop. Pero itong batang ito, ikot-ikot, ikot-ikot, parang trompo. Kaya kayo na magbilang kung nakailang spin move itong player na to bago malibre para sa easy layup. Paniguradong nahilo ang mga defender. Kayo rin ba? Nahilo kayo sa ikot-ikot, ikot-ikot? At yan po ang ating Stop and Pop moment. Alright mga kaibigan, when we come back sa second hour ng Power and Play, makakausap po natin Dallas Mavericks International Scout Jim Kelly sa Power and Play. Hatid sa inyo ng Cherry Loom, Cherry Tigo at ng Chooks to Go. Magbabalik po kami. Ang oras natin, 1 minuto na lamang bago mag alas 9 ng umaga. This time check is brought to you by Birmingham Subdivisions. Come home to Birmingham.
I dare to dream big, to be a voice of my generation, to inspire resilience in the face of roadblocks. And in sharing my stories, I let others share in my passion.
Follow Kai's stories on Twitter and share yours. With Smart Double Giga Stories. Share 2 times the passion with 2 gigabytes for Twitter and more. Guaranteed every day, plus data for all sites.
Simple, smart ako.
Alex, are you ready to have some fun on your first driving lesson?
Nag-uumapaw sa real chicken juice na swak sa panlasa ng buong pamilya. Available in sweet roast, pepper roast, at harissa roast variants. Chooks to go. Masarap kahit walang sauce. Tawag na sa Chooks to Go Delivery Hotline 8687-1010 o online sa chookstogodelivery.com or via GrabFood at Foodpanda.
kailangan ko na naman palitan ng bubong ko, pare. Mag-iisang taon pa lang yan. May tulo na kagad.
Ay, bossing! Baka naman kasi hindi matibay yung ginamit nyo. Dapat ang gamitin mo ay cherry loom, ang yerong aluminum. Basta yero, cherry loom. Tibay protektado sa pangmatagalang yero.
Kumusta kayo? Kaya pa ba? Pasensya na, toxic no? Pula, dilaw, kung ano-anong kulay. Pero alam ba nila na ang problema mo? Murang bilihin, pabahay, trabaho, kuryente, tubig, ang dami. Kung gulong-gulo ka na at hanap mo yung peace of mind, halika, magbubon tayo.
Power and Play. Team na sa Radyo 5 92.3 News FM. Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
Naimbag na bigat sa lahat po ng ating mga tagapakinig, tagapanood sa lalawigan po ng Ilocos, sa San Esteban, Ilocos Sur. Kamusta po kayong lahat dyan? Alright, bago tayo magpatuloy, isang pasasalamat lamang sa lahat po ng mga sumusuporta sa inyong paboritong programang Power and Play. Unang-una po, of course, ang Cherry Loom, ang yerong may aluminum. Sa ganitong pabago-bago ang panahon, mga kababayan, sobrang init tapos biglang uulan. Kailangan natin ng matibay at protektadong bubong. Dapat ang bubong ay yerong may aluminum. Kapag may aluminum, tsak na pangmatagalan. At isa lang ang alam kong dekalidad na yerong may aluminum, yan ang Cherry Loom, tibay protektado sa pangmatagalang yero. Cherry Loom, ang yerong may aluminum.
Thank you!
Cherry Tigo, saluhin ang swerteng hatid ng Year of the Tiger. Own a brand new Tigo 2 Pro crossover with Cherry's Year of the Growling Tigo promo. Sa halagang 68,000 low down payment, may sporty 5-seater ka na safe in any road condition dahil mas mataas ang ground clearance nito kaysa sa sedan. Spacious din ang seats at legroom kaya mas komportable mapa-driver or passenger. May 9-inch infotainment system na pwedeng i-connect sa MirrorLink and Apple CarPlay para mas convenient at chill ang travel mo. Pili na from the 6 lucky colors of Tigo 2 Pro, Passion Orange, Lava Red, Graphite Gray, Vivid White, Tuscan Beige, at Laser Yellow. Hashtag move for more colors and adventure Bisitahin ang www.cherryauto.ph to know more about the fun-to-drive Tigo 2 Pro.
Thank you!
Chooks to go! Ang nag-iisang manok ng bayan. Meron na po ngayong Chooks to stay at Chooks, the first dine-in restaurant of Chooks to go. Visit us at Level 1 Robinson's Place, Salipa, Batangas. Of course, avail of their quarter chicken with Unli Chooks rice and soup. Chooks to go, ang nag-iisang manok ng bayan. At of course, ang kanilang pinakabagong handog, yung pong manok nila na may flavorful chicken juice. So again, Chooks to go, ang nag-iisang manok ng bayan, masarap kahit walang sauce. Joyride, ang bago ninyong kasundo. Magpadala with confidence kahit para sa negosyo o personal bulk deliveries man yan. Kayang-kayang i-deliver securely with Joyride. And of course, tuloy-tuloy na po ang Joyride Motorcycle Taxi at ang pinakabagong offering ng Joyride Philippines, ang Joyride Car. So download the latest Joyride Super App now. Elms Seafood Paluto, the latest offering of the Elms Resto Bar Group, located at Unit 2, ground floor, Calle Bistro, Ever Commonwealth, Quezon City. Enjoy their delectable seafood menu in a relaxed casual dining atmosphere for your salo-salo seafood meal. Visit also Carlito Sisig Seafood Paluto along Shaw Boulevard. Elms Resto Bar Group. Marami din salamat of course sa Skin, Your Face and Body Anti-Aging Center. With branches at Alabang Town Center and Green Hills, San Juan. For your skin assessments and treatment schedule, please call 0917-890-1640 or 0977-809-8886. Birmingham Subdivisions. Come home to Birmingham, located at Antipolo, Cainta, General Trias, Cavite, Marikina, Pasig, Rodriguez, San Mateo, and Tagaytay. Building community since 1984. Celebrate in your new home, your home in Birmingham Subdivisions. Check out their FB page or call 0939-921-7458 or 891-27731. Asea Subic Beach Resort. Experience the getaway that you deserve and dive into limitless happenings, rejuvenating experiences, and gastronomic adventures. Asea Subic Beach Resort. Thank you also to Lick Hobby. Weave by Weave, hand in hand. Check out their IG pages. And of course, Power and Play is powered by Smart.
Thank you!
Live Smart! Alright mga kaibigan, marami po salamat sa inyong lahat, sa lahat po ng mga suki at mga nanonood ng Power and Play. Alright, at this point, pinag-uusapan natin ang kanina, ang UAAP. Of course, si Kai Soto, naglaro yan sa Ateneo, pero ngayon, siya po ay nag-aabang ng pumasok ng NBA. Nag-apply siya sa NBA draft, subalit hindi pa malaman kung itutuloy ba, mapipili ba. Again, that is a big if. Ngayong araw po ito, makakausap natin isang marunong sa NBA draft. Ang dating scout ng Toronto Raptors, ngayon ay nasa Dallas Mavericks na. Siya rin po ay dating PBA coaching consultant ng Presto at naging TV panelist ng vintage sports ng dekada 90. Matalik ko pong kaibigan, naging partner sa TV at meron lang konti siyang cautionary note, mga kaibigan. Hindi po pwede nating pag-usapan ang specific na pangalan sa NBA draft dahil may rule po ang NBA na habang hindi pa tapos ang deadline sa pag-withdraw o pagpasok ng applications, scouts and team officials cannot talk about a particular NBA draft applicant. But nonetheless, an interesting conversation with no other than Dallas Mavericks international scout, Jim Kelly. And as promised, we have with us no other than the Dallas Mavericks scout, and of course a former PBA consultant and a TV panelist in the PBA games, no other than my good friend, Jim Kelly. Jim and I go back a long, long way when we were still in vintage, and this guy was just not only a terrific analyst and member of the panel, but he was also a terrific basketball player when we were playing in the media tournaments. And I remember those days, Jim, and I certainly, I'm very happy to see you again. First of all, Jim, let me ask you, your work as a scout is different from the scout that looks at players and in a particular game and analyzes their game in a particular series. That is not your work. You're not a coaching scout, or is that also part of your job?
No, my scout job is more for the future. I do NBA. I do college scouting. When you're looking at NBA players, you tend to look at the players who are upcoming free agents or restricted free agents. And they're the players that will be on the market the following year, or in this case, in June or July. When you look at college players, you're looking basically for your draft or for your G League team. The NBA players, you also try to poke around which team will be trading players, which team, teams change at the end of every year. So, which players will be leaving, what's the weakness of your team, what's the strength of their team. So a little bit of strategy involved in that.
And how much of the work of a scout actually goes into the construction of a team? In other words, is this principally, the basis for team owners, GMs, presidents for basketball operations of teams in the way they construct their current roster?
Well, I think it's all information, especially now with analytical information coming in. Every team has a in-depth analytical department, and I think you have to measure your subjective basketball information that's coming in, and then there's the analytic information with age and percentages and lineups, and then it comes down to coaches' preference, what style of play they like, and finally, at the end of the day, you have an owner who could supersede all those things.
Well, that brings me to, I guess, the next question about Dallas. You talked about the owner. Mark Cuban, of course, is one of the more famous team owners in the NBA, very vocal about league matters, very vocal even in politics. Tell us a little bit about Mark Cuban as a team owner, Jim.
Mark is very involved. He's very passionate about the game. You'll see him on the sidelines of 90% of the games. You'll see him in practice. If he comes into the meeting, he's prepared as anyone else. I mean, he knows about players. He knows what's going on the court. He has his opinion. It's his team. But whatever he says, it's coming from a background that, he is prepared. He probably watches as many games as I do. That guy never sleeps. And on top of that, he's got his own businesses on the side.
And at the end of the day, it's still his imprimatur. It's still his approval that makes it possible for you to acquire players.
I think it's a team effort. I mean, sure enough, you want the big bosses, okay. But, I mean, if there's a meeting, he's a voice like any other voice, except his voice could trump out your voice. But it's like any other business in that regard.
All right. Talking about voices, obviously, the biggest voice in the Dallas coaching staff is the head coach, Jason Kidd, a legend, and many Filipinos know Jason. He played with the Dallas Mavericks for a very, very long time. He's a local legend as well in Dallas, and of course, he's traveled even with the Nets and the Suns. But when you talk about Jason Kidd, what sets him apart? What do you think are his strengths as a head coach, and towing this team now as a fourth seed in a very tough Western Conference?
Jason has a very deep basketball background. When he played for Team USA, I think he played for like 6 years. He was never in a losing game, never mind a losing competition. He is a winner. He has a great feel for the game, and he has great composure. In the past, and this is when Rick Carlisle was a head coach, we were known more as a offensive team. I mean, at one time, I think we had the leading offensive efficiency in the league for 1 year, and that's only going back 2 or 3 years. What Jason has done coming in, he's changed our focus. We're a lot more defensive orientated, and it took some time early in the year. And Jason's not a ranter, a yeller, or a screamer. He's a very good teacher. He's a very good communicator. And in the space of, I'd say, 3 months, he's turned around the foundation of the team to be a lot more defensive, and we've had more success in that regard. Maybe because he's not as vocal, maybe because we have Luka and people expect it, but I would have thought he got a little bit more chatter as a Coach of the Year candidate.
All right. Well, you have been involved not only with the Dallas Mavericks, but also with the Toronto Raptors. You started your NBA, career with the Raptors all the way back in 1996 as a scout as well. And, you have seen a lot of good generational players, even in that particular part of your career. When I look at the list, you were part of the Raptors when they picked up guys like Marcus Camby back in 2007, Tracy McGrady as the 9th pick, also in 1997. Chris Bosh as a 4th pick back in 2003, and Andrea Bargnani back in 2006. And of course, the most recognizable Raptor was DeMar DeRozan back in 2009. How much of that part of your job is satisfying to see all of these players, Jim, being part of not only great programs, but championship teams?
Well, you always like to scout talent and personalities. You would hope they go on for future success, but when you're part of the decision that makes a player part of your team and they go on to be an NBA All-Star, there is a lot of pride in that. And maybe one of the players you didn't mention, and this was sort of unique, back when I was with Toronto, we picked up Vince Carter, who turned out to be a very big name in the league. And Vince started out with Toronto, and my first year when I switched over from Toronto to Dallas, Vince was still playing. He played for us in Dallas.
That's right.
And the development of Vince as a player, he had his peak, and I'd have to say at that time he was a little bit more on a downhill, but also as his personality as a player. And now he's a very well-known TV analyst.
That's right.
That's really amazing right there.
When you look at all of these players that you have been involved, at least in drafting, who do you think was the one that you actually had more inputs to the organization? Just convincing the organization to pick him up. Maybe somebody who was not even known, and all of a sudden coming up in the draft.
Well, that's a good question. The easy ones are like Luka, or like Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, and the way it usually works is, if I see somebody who I think is a talent, a big talent, you would tell someone else on your staff, you got to see him, and vice versa. They would tell me, you'd have to see him. And I would say by the end of the process and evaluation process, and you're getting ready for the draft, everyone has seen the player on the team, and usually the general manager has seen the player on the team, especially if you're high up in the lottery. This year we're down in the draft at 26th. I don't think that your front office people can see all those, but I think it's much more of a team effort rather than an individual effort. Although it would be a nice story if you say, well, I just saw Vince Carter and no one else saw him. the nature of scouting today and the nature of players being known worldwide and on the internet, I think everybody knows about the top players. I think one of the big things is try to get the right player for your team at the right time, fitting into the coaching style, fitting into what your team needs. I think that's probably as important as finding a player with talent.
The biggest name, of course, at least in your Dallas stint, of course, is Luka Doncic. And he was not actually a draft of Dallas. You traded for Luka after picking up Trae Young back in 2018 with your 5th pick. Tell us a little bit about that, Jim. What was the thinking around that particular decision?
Well, Luka was for us a value. Definitely, he was up on top of our charts. We didn't think he would get to us. But, you know, he's international, so that makes him a little bit more distant from the people in mainstream of the organization. But number two, Luka's a unique body size. He's not the fastest. He's not the quickest. And there could be doubts as to what he can and what he can't do. You know, his style of play is much more cerebral than I think a lot of other players are athletic. But he can just flat out hoop. He loves to play basketball. He loves to compete. He loves to be in a big moment. And I think that's one thing we probably valued more than any other team or any teams in front of us. With him, you know, we've had success with Dirk in the Dallas organization. We have a number of international players on our roster. At that time, we seemed to have a lot of faith in our international scouting, and we thought he could transfer over, and he's done over and above whatever we have thought.
Well, Luka right now is already on top of the playoff scoring list, one of the more celebrated players already. He's averaging in his career over 26 points, 8.5 rebounds, 8 assists, about 46% shooting. Just a generational player. Do you think that Luka has reached his potential, Jim?
Not even close. I think he can be even better. I think he has a little bit of off-season, because in his off-season, he never has an off-season. Now, he'll get done here. He'll play for the Slovenian national team. Then he'll play in the European Championship. Then he'll have 3 weeks off, and then he'll start again with Dallas. I think if he has a summer where he actually has 2 months off and he can work on one area or another specific area of his game and his physical conditioning, I think you're going to see an even better player than him. But he just plays 11 months a year, and he wants to play 11 months a year. That's his relaxation. Now, some people have golf or fishing. He has basketball. That's what he likes to do.
Well, he's still young. He's 23 years old, and obviously he's got a lot of energy. But of course, there must be a little bit of concern from the team, from Dallas, about, I guess, injuries that really hound him once in a while during the season because of all that basketball he plays all year long.
Yeah, but he's a tough guy to hold down. Let me tell you, he really likes to compete. But we are concerned with that. I mean, he's been nicked up a number of times, and like I said, if he had 2 or 3 months off in the summer, I think you could probably address that. But so far, that hasn't happened for us.
Of course, you know, when you talk about Luka, of course, in the first round, he didn't start the first round against the Jazz, but he finished it, and you know, you're on to the second round. And the second round is a little bit tough because you're playing the number 1 seed, not only in the West, but in the entire NBA, the Phoenix Suns. And when you look at this series, Jim, you're down 0-2 in this series right now. What is more of the concern for Dallas right now? We see the numbers of Jalen Brunson down from his first round series. We saw in game 2 that only 2 players scored outside of Luka in double digits. That was Bullock and Spencer Dinwiddie. And of course, defensively, Phoenix shot almost 65% from the field and 52% from threes. So which is the bigger concern right now for Dallas? The offense?
All of the above. You know, we've got to find a way to slow them down some. They just shot the lights out the other day. We were up at halftime. We're in the game well into the third quarter, started the fourth. And then I don't think they missed for about 6 or 7 minutes. Defensively, we've been stronger this year. I think we're going to have to do a better job of that, especially on their pick and roll coverage with Chris Paul, he's had a very good series so far. And then on the other side of the ball, we haven't shot the ball like we had in the Utah series. We usually have more scoring balance, but we play at Dallas tonight. So let's see if we get some more points on the board. Yeah, I think they've had, for the most part, they've had the lead in the series. They've played at home, and they've been flowing with a lot of confidence. I think if we can get the lead on them, put a little bit more pressure on their shooting, play a little bit better defense, I think the result could be different. But, I mean, at the end of the day, we've got to shoot the ball better. We're a big 3-ball shooting team. Luka finds people all over the court. We're going to get a lot of open looks. We need to put a little bit more pressure on them so they're chasing us rather than us always chasing them.
All right. Well, the Suns went to the finals last year, and they've added a piece or two here and there, but basically it is the same team. Of course, they've added a little depth, especially in the middle. Do you think that this Suns team is a better team than last season's?
I think they play with a lot more confidence this year, especially when they go to the bench. They've been there and they've done that. For my 2 cents there, you usually don't see a team come up in the NBA who hadn't been in the playoffs the year before and make a great jump, go to the finals. Usually it goes in stages, and if you get to the conference final and then you get to the NBA finals, I think there's a degree of confidence, there's a degree of self that you've been in bigger games before, because there's a whole lot of noise in the arena, and not only in the arena, building up to the game. And I think when you're used to that, you get a little bit more familiar. You feel better about yourself, and their team is much the same, like you said, as it was last year. So they've been through this before. So I think that definitely helps them. And if you ask me, are they a better team this year than last year? I would say without a doubt.
All right. Well, I know that a lot of people are expecting that we should talk about the upcoming draft. But as a cautionary note to all of our viewers and listeners, there is an NBA rule that does not allow NBA personnel, from coaches to scouts, to be talking about players in the draft until the deadline for them either to change their mind in entering the draft or not. So right now we are covered by that particular rule, and that is a cautionary note that I have been informed of, and certainly we will respect that as we don't want to put Jim in any kind of trouble here. But let me ask you, Jim, just something general about the NBA draft that will happen on June 23. What what are the plus and minuses of this year's draft, if you are to look at it from the bigger picture and from the perspective of players that want to come into the draft?
And let's look a little internationally, because that's where we're coming from right here. Number one, in the draft this year, there are not 60 picks, there are only 58 picks, because Miami and Milwaukee both have been penalized for jumping the gun on free agency last year. So where that might not seem like much, that's 2 less people that are going to get picked in the draft.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. But also, maybe more for international, there are 6 teams in the first round with multiple picks. There's also another 6 teams in the second round with multiple picks. And when I say multiple picks, now they've acquired them in trades, or they've bought them, or somehow they have 2 picks in a round. And why that's important is for teams that are trying to compete for a playoffs, especially if you have multiple second round picks. It's hard to assemble and integrate multiple second round teams, second round players on your roster and still be competitive. I know we have the G League and there's 2-way contracts and as such, but a lot of times that's just, it gets very clogged down. So what happens is, I think a lot of teams, especially as we get towards the end of the second round, you're going to see a lot of trading. You're also going to see a lot of players who will be picked and they might not wind up with the team for a year or two. They call them draft and stash type players, where they might go and stay with an international team for another year or two, and then the NBA team would retain their rights, and then they would come in a year or two. I think that's definitely a possibility with this draft, because the star potential of the international players this year in the draft is probably not as strong as it's been in the past. But there are a number of good international players that I think will get picked.
All right. When you talk about selections in the draft, Jim, there are 2 ways to look at it, and I want to ask you what your philosophy is. Maybe what is Dallas's philosophy? Is it the need of a team that comes first, or is it really the best available talent in the pool?
Boy, that's like they used to say the $64,000 question, when $64,000 was a lot of money. You always say you're going to take the best player available. But I think as the draft goes on and you drift towards the 60s and the 40s and the 30s, then you try to get a player who can plug in and play and probably help you out. But I think in the top end of the draft, most of the time you take the best player available, the player with the most talent. And then as you go along, then maybe you take a little bit more of a chance. Well, we need a big. Our pick is number 30. Well, let's see what the best big is left available on the board and see if he can fit in there. So it's a little bit of both. I don't think it's straight one answer, but as a rule, I think most teams take the best player available.
All right. In your case, in a scout's case, when you assess draft applicants that are applying, what are your checklist priorities? What do you look at? Just to tick off those boxes. Do you look at, for instance, market attraction? Do you look at, whether it will drive the community into more action towards the team? What are the factors that teams look at when they analyze a particular list of draftees?
Yeah, I think some teams might look at market attraction, but I think most times they look at how they're going to get into the team. How is their game? What are their skills going to do for the team? For example, in Dallas, we're sold out just about every game. We might generate more interest, but it'd be very hard to generate more fannies in the seats because we're sold out all the time. But I think more or less you're looking for players who can fit in your roster. You're looking for athletically what they can do. Does their skills match the style of play that you have? We're probably more defensive orientated now than we were 2 or 3 years ago. When 2 or 3 years ago, you had to be a great 3-ball shooter. So those are little things that we look for on our end.
Do you look at age? Do you look at where they played? How many, their stats in a particular league? Are there rankings of particular leagues all over the world that are more valuable to teams in terms of experience? Is that something that factors in?
We have analytical people, and that's a constant fight with the analytical people and the actual, I guess you'd call it subjective scouting. The younger the player, the more attractive to the analytical people. They might say if a player is 22 or 23, he's old. Whereby the scouts might say, 22 or 23, we're only going to have him 3 or 4 years. What's the difference? And that's a constant tug within the organization and around the table. And that's where decisions get made right there. In terms of level of competition, there's levels of competition stateside here in the NCAA. There's competition on different Euro leagues and international leagues. But now with the World Championships and with the Olympics, I think you get a better feel for players internationally where even if they're playing in a lesser league, if they can compete on that stage, their value will be appreciated. And I think it's a little bit more well-rounded now than it had been in the past.
In the modern NBA, we see a lot of, players playing different roles. In fact, it has become almost positionless, as some coaches would like to preach. When you look at the modern NBA big, what do you look for, Jim, in terms of a young applicant coming in?
Well, for sure, the three-point shooting has become a major part of the game. Stretching of the floor, it used to be 3 out, 2 in, then 4 out, and 1 in. And now almost all teams use 5 out. Some teams play big some of the times, but very rarely do you find a team that plays with a big man for the entire 48 minutes of the game. At some point in the game, they're going to play 5 ball handlers or perimeter people. We're one of them. I think the three-point shooting has really changed the game. You just see so many games now where teams are leading by 20 points in the first half or 20-plus points, and they wind up losing the game. And I don't think that's so much a result of poor coaching. I think that's more a result of the three-point factor, 24-second clock. And there's so many possessions in a game that if you get down a lot of points early, you can come back. No lead is safe. And sometimes it's almost harder to play with a big lead than it is when you're behind because you tend to play a little bit more conservatively.
All right. Well, it is clear as well that in the NBA, there are not too many Asians that are playing. You know, you can count the number of Asians that have been drafted and are in the roster. Hachimura, of course, from Japan, is the most prominent one right now. But when you look at guys like Jordan Clarkson, Jim, and Jalen Green, both with Filipino heritage, has that Filipino stock come to the fore and to the attention of NBA teams, or are they still considered more of an American than a Filipino?
I would think they're probably considered more of an American. I don't know if many people know that Jalen Green is Filipino. They know Jordan Clarkson, that's for sure. But Jalen Green is first year in the league. He's with Houston. Probably what would help them out even more is if they can play for the Philippines and say the World Championship. There's a little bit more of an association there. I know Green played for USA, so I don't know if he'd ever be eligible. There's the ongoing controversy with Clarkson. Kenny, will FIBA allow him? You're always hoping for a breakthrough there. And, there's so much love for basketball, so much passion in the Philippines that you're always looking for who's going to be the first Filipino who's going to be able to make it to the NBA. And maybe it'll be very shortly, I hope.
We hope so. And, of course, there have been a few players who have tried. Ray Parks tried.
Yan po mga kaibigan ng ating panayam kay Jim Kelly, ang Dallas Mavericks scout, na hindi siya makapagsalita tungkol kay Kai Soto dahil meron pong prohibition about that. But meron po siya mga pahapyaw, as he told me, na naghahanap ang mga NBA players na mga malalaki pero kailangan sumut sa labas. May konting influence, of course, ang mga coaches sa kung sino ang kanilang kukunin. Of course, yung pong pagiging Asyano. But again, he told me that, Kai will have his time. Maaaring developmental pa lang ang tingin sa kanya, but he might land a spot doon sa mga kuponan na maraming picks this year sa draft. So pagdasal po natin si Kai Soto, ang ating bata na papasok sa NBA draft. Alright mga kaibigan, tuloy-tuloy po tayo as we have just about 21 minutes on the show. Ngayon po, ang ating susunod makakasama at may interview ay isang athlete na lumalaban sa Southeast Asian Games. Ito po ang fencing in the spotlight.
Power and Play with Noli Iyala.
Maxine Esteban is one of the top fencers of the Philippines. Siya rin po ay nakakuha ng bronze medal sa huling Southeast Asian Games sa Manila. At ngayon, siya po ay nagtitraining sa Europe. Nakapanayan po natin ang ating pambato sa Southeast Asian Games fencing, Maxine Esteban, sa Power and Play.
As promised, we have one of the top fencers of the country in the show today. No other than Maxine Esteban. Good day, Maxine. Thank you for joining us on Power and Play.
Hello, good evening, Tito Nolly and Sir Mike, and everyone who's watching. Thank you so much for inviting me in the show, and I hope all is well in the Philippines.
All is well. Elections are coming up, so it's everybody's really getting stressed here. But first of all, let me put it straight. Where are you now? Let's set the record here straight. Where are you now, Maxine?
I'm in Italy, but I'm headed to the Philippines in 2 days.
Wow! And how long have you been away from the Philippines?
I've been away for 3 months, so it's pretty long. I miss my family so much, and I'm really, really excited to come home.
Well, this is really a supreme sacrifice. I have spoken to your biggest supporter, of course, your parents. And they always they told me how really it's a sacrifice for you, how you're studying at the same time, online schooling, and still training and competing in Europe. Just tell us very briefly, how tough is that? I mean, are you enjoying that, or are you finding ways to just cope with what you're given?
Honestly, I've always enjoyed being very competitive in all aspects of my life. Like in terms of academics, school and in terms of academics, sports, and my musical instrument. So I think a lot of athletes like me, like student athletes, make this sacrifice for our country and for us. I think like we all enjoy this. Like for us, this is a sacrifice, but like the outcome, like when we like win, it's like beyond all. Like we don't really. It surpassed us all the sacrifices.
Yeah, well, I can see that you've had to manage your time, you've had to manage the space that you've been given, and of course everything that you have to do for the country in terms of fencing, and of course it has produced a lot of good results, and we saw your results recently in the competitions that you've entered. We'll talk about that in a short while. Let me just introduce you to some of the people who have not read about you or have seen you compete. So, Maxine, how did you get into fencing? A little bit about that, how you got into fencing, and what got you hooked on fencing.
I've actually tried many different sports before fencing, like taekwondo, swimming, badminton, many different sports. But it was actually fencing that got me really hooked because I've always loved like I wasn't really like the typical Barbie girl. Like I wanted, I wanted something a little bit boyish. So my parents were also both athletes, so they felt that it was really good for children or the youth to be engaged in sport. So I excelled in like those other sports, but then unfortunately when I got hooked to figure skating, the ice skating rink closed in Mega Mall, so I was forced to choose another sport.
Wow.
And, yeah, so sometime in 2011, like Xavier School, they have like a fencing club and they trained every Saturday. So I decided to join, and I really like fencing because I found like the outfit to be cool as well. And yeah, I also like saw this movie like Parent Trap, where they were doing like fencing, and I found it really interesting.
Oh, okay. So it's about the clothes. It's about the the competition. I guess ice skating's loss is fencing's gain. But in terms of fencing itself, what fascinates you about the sport? Having to face a competitor, an opponent in front of you, and wielding that particular weapon. What captured your imagination there?
In fencing, I really like the agility and the strategy that comes with the speed. I like how you don't know what the opponent will do or like what his strategy is, but you need to come up like with your own strategy, like within a split second.
Yeah. So because for many of us who are not familiar with the sport, we think it's just simple skirmishes, simple trying to get to a target, but there is a lot of planning pala with that. Is that what you're saying, Maxine?
Yes, because like you adjust to your opponent's strengths and weaknesses, but at the same time they also adjust to yours. So it's in a matter of like 3 minutes, you have to adjust to one another, and whoever adjusts first, then she or he will win.
Well, it looks like, because you're almost practically standing still, trying to chase someone or trying to avoid getting hit. But does conditioning play a big role in fencing?
Yes, it actually does, because you have to like stay ready and like it's like you're in a squat position for like 9 minutes, and you have to be lunging, moving forward, moving backward. So you really have to have good physical conditioning.
What kind of a person or athlete gets hooked into fencing? What kind of traits must you have? Because we know, for instance, basketball, maybe a guy that likes a lot of physicality or a lot of running or a lot of bumping. But in chess, for instance, you have to be more of a very patient with with strategies. What type of characteristics
must a fencer have to become good in the sport?
I think someone who is challenged with thinking, like coming up with last minute decisions, like chess. As you mentioned, like fencing is like mental chess, and while getting to know your opponent, you need to come up with a strategy within a few minutes.
In 2011, you decided to get into the sport, so that's about 11 years ago. And you know, who were the biggest influencers and pushing you really to get to the heights of the sport here in the Philippines?
Of course, first is my family, because of course I wouldn't be here without them, and it's really a big sacrifice, not only for me, like to be away from them for like so long, but also a sacrifice for them, because my dad is very, like, not just my dad, but like my whole family, like we're very close to each other, and usually like nights we would watch movies or play Dota together, and of course it's a sacrifice for them. Nah, I'm not there at home anymore, so yeah, they really miss me. And second, of course, to everyone who's supporting me, like it really motivates me to continue and to work harder for them.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, well, you know, everyone got struck by the pandemic, and obviously a lot of things stopped, came to a halt because of what happened in the country and in the world. In your case, how big was the impact of the pandemic in terms of your training?
It was really big, because like the Philippines, like they closed down all of the training facilities, so Ultra was closed and we couldn't train anywhere. So I stopped training for about 1.5 years, or close to 2 years, and all the competitions were also canceled. So I was sidelined for like 2 years, and this really affected like my fencing, because in fencing, like you really need a lot of exposure, a lot of experiences.
And then you decided to go full time and train and compete in Europe. What made you decide to go abroad?
It was because before I was very concentrated with academics. I mean, even now, but before it wasn't online. So it was really hard for me like to join all the competitions and train abroad at the same time. So now, since it's online, it really gave me the opportunity like to train, and it's always something I've always wanted to do, because before I wanted to be like good in academics and in fencing. I wanted to excel in both, but I realized that it was very hard because I can't be like a jack of all trades. So now I'm really concentrating on fencing, and since I'm graduating already, I have more time to concentrate more and to join more competitions.
What is the difference? Sometimes it's obvious, but you know, for us who only see the big picture, what is the difference between training abroad and training in the Philippines for you?
For me, it's because there's more fencers to fence in like internationally, because in the Philippines there's not a lot of fencers, so a lot of competitions are also in Europe, so it's easier for me to move around Europe. So being here in Europe is really practical. Yeah.
And when you talk about being practical, getting to compete against more fencers, and I guess world-class talent in fencing, what have been the learnings for you, Maxine, so far in the past year and past few months that you've been there? What has been the biggest learnings for you so far?
That's a hard question. I guess not to take anything for granted, because well, this is my first formal year in seniors category, and I actually lost like 2 playing years due to the pandemic. And parang before the pandemic, I was very busy and was very like I was into like academics. Like I didn't really have time for anything else. Like I didn't even have much time for my family. So like during the pandemic, it made me realize na God can take away anything in a snap of a finger.
You know, you acknowledged in one of your interviews about the need for you to mature in seniors play. Do you think you found that maturity training in Italy, training in Europe? Can you elaborate a little bit about that maturity that you're looking for in your particular game?
Okay, so yeah, as I said a while ago, like this is my first formal year in seniors category, and as I started to fence in the seniors category, I realized how there's so much more skilled fencers in the seniors category. Like in the World Cup that I joined in Mexico last February, I really felt that I was a neophyte. Like it's not just about the speed or the strength, but also the strategy and the confidence of the more senior national team fencers. So in the pool of 64, everyone is very highly ranked and very mature, confident, seasoned fencers. So it made me feel very small at first, like to be honest. So I had to encourage myself and reassure myself that I can also do it. And even after like stunning finishes, I still sometimes find myself thinking like, was I just lucky? Like that I did well, or am I already at par with these people? So it's really a mind game. You have to be both physically strong and mentally strong.
Well, it's really confidence building, I suppose, when you go abroad, and not only confidence in your game, but confidence in yourself. Having to live alone and having to compete without too many fans or too many family in supporting you right there in the arena. I think that's really a lot of confidence building that you are getting. But, you know, Maxine, you may not have family support there, but obviously they're all praying for you all the time, and all the people in the country as well. But in terms of actual people supporting you in Europe, like coaches, who has been part of your team, and how much have they helped you in terms of your progress in fencing?
Well, I'm actually alone here with my coach. His name is Andrea Magro, and he's a very, very good coach.
How did you get hooked to Andrea? Was he recommended to you by the PSC, by the Philippine Fencing Association? How did you get hooked to him?
We met in one of the international competitions, and it was a few years ago, and he approached me and he was like, "Oh, I think you have a lot of potential." So,
wow!
So he said that after his contract with Kuwait, maybe he can try to come to the Philippines and try to coach me.
Well, talk to us about your European tour. Your last tournament in Germany, you finished 44th out of 193 fencers, and that's terrific. That is just amazing. And
well, due to the lack of time, medyo naubusan tayo ng oras kay Maxine. But if you have a chance, kung meron po rin kayong pagkakataon, mapapanood nyo po yan sa ating Facebook page. But again, Maxine Esteban, our top fencer at pag-asa po para sa Southeast Asian Games. Pagdasal po natin lahat ng ating mga atleta na lalahok dyan sa Hanoi, Vietnam for the 31st Southeast Asian Games. Alright mga kaibigan, before we end, of course, gusto kong basahin at gusto kong magpasalamat sa lahat po ng mga nagpadala ng kanilang opinion tungkol sa ating pinupulsuhan ngayong araw pong ito. Kung panahon na ba na mag-expand muli ang PBA? Tama ba na magdagdag ng expansion teams sa PBA ngayon? No? Marami po nagpadala again as usual sa ating Twitter account. Napakadami. Basahin ko lang yung iba dahil medyo ubos na tayo ng oras. Rex Del Yabut Malyari, yes na yes para mas mapabuti pa ang liga at dagdag excitement sa mga loyal na sumusuporta ng PBA. Mula naman kay Dante Misiano, for me they should first resolve issues like unfair trade, salary caps to keep up the league in another level like Japan. Nagpadala si Andoy Putol, tama lang na magdagdag ng 2 team ang PBA para naman maraming players ang mabigyan ng trabaho. Si Don Tiburcio, sabi niya talent without exposure is meaningless. Alam namin na siksikan na talaga ang great talent sa PBA, kaya kailangan na talaga ng expansion teams. At marami pa pong iba, pero ang napili natin ngayong araw na ito para manalo po ng Chooks to Go gift certificates sa ating Pulso ng Bayan, walang iba kundi si Boki Blas Sauro. Ang sabi niya, yes, it's time. It's nice to see new teams in the PBA to have a new challenge and new approach para maganda ang labanan. Also good for the financial aspect of the league. Tama yan. For the players, there are so many talented players na gustong sumali and magpakita yung galing and madiscover sila. It's nice to hear a good news for PBA. Good luck and cheers for the new team. Yan po mula kay Boki Blas Saro. At ang pangalawang napili po natin ay si Ryan Kilab Operario. Ryan Kilab Operario, I think kailangan munang ma-resolve ng PBA yung issue ng parity among teams, lalo na yung mga expansion teams na hindi pa rin umaangat like Blackwater and Kia, yung trade issues din and supermax contracts or disparity among contracts of players. Para sa akin mga kaibigan, it's time, it's good, marami tayong player, but I think the PBA una-una must have a dispersal draft. Wag po yung bubuo sila from the outside para ang team na papasok ay malakas. And pangalawa, I think they should take care of the salary cap, yan po mga trading matters, and of course yung free agency rule ng PBA should also be given some attention. Alright, doon sa mga nag-aabang sa NBA, nanalo ang Philadelphia 76ers. Ayan, nakita nyo. Bumalik lang si Embiid. 99-79 laban sa Miami Heat. Now the series is 2-1. Lamang pa rin po ang Heat. And ang Philly, dahil bumalik si Embiid, nakabalik na rin sa seryeng ito. Alright. Well, kagaya na po ng ating laging sinasabi, malapit na ang halalan. Again, paalala ko po sa inyo, maaga po kayong bumoto sa Lunes. At pagkatapos po niyan, tayo po'y magsama-sama na. Wala na pong bangayan, iisa lang naman ang ating bansa. Yan po ang pakiusap ko. At kung sino po ang mananalo, tanggapin po natin. Lalo-lalo na if it's clean, honest, fair, ang ating elections. Yan po ang Signal TV and of course ang buong TV5. Sa hanay ng TV5 ay meron pong Bilang Pilipino 2022 31-hour coverage mula May 9 hanggang 10 sa mas pinalaki at pinalakas na election coverage ng TV5 at Signal, Smart at PLDT. So abangan nyo po yan dito sa ating mga himpilan. Alright mga kaibigan, that will do it for us today. Again, tuwing Sabado, bawal po ang masungit at sa lahat po ng ating gawain, ad maiorem Dei gloriam, all for the greater glory of God. Kami po ang 1PH Teleserbisyo para sa Pilipino. Happy Sports Weekend mga kapatid. Go out and vote and guard your sacred vote. Happy Sports Weekend. More power, more play.
Power and Play with Com Noli Iyala.
Sa kapwa ko Pilipino, ipagmalaki ang galing na meron tayo. Ilantad ang likas nating talento at magdala ng saya sa mundo. Sa harap ng pagsubok ay di susuko. Para sa pangarap tayo'y porsigido. Magpakitang gilas na at huwag magpatalo. Ipagdiwang natin ang Pilipino. Yan ang Pinoy. Mula noon at hanggang ngayon, talento natin ang bida. Mula sa simpleng bakuran hanggang entablado natin ipakita. May pagsubok man ng Pinoy, pinalalakas ng saya. San man tayo sa pulo, Chumbe, Sibay, Lakay, Amiga. Sama-samang pakita ang galing natin katropa. Sa kapwa ko